People complain about bureaucracy almost every day. They say it's too slow, there's too many sign-offs, there's too many handoffs. It's anti-innovation and it has so many negative connotations. That's true, but the opposite is also true, in that bureaucracy is actually one of the best inventions of humankind. And you can also notice this, that people, when there's no bureaucracy, they tend to complain just as much, right? They'll say, oh, why isn't there a process here? Why is there no supervisor reviewing the results of the work and so on, right? And so if there's too little bureaucracy, people complain. And if there's too much bureaucracy, people complain as well. The core problem with bureaucracy is that, as Oscar Wilde put it, bureaucracy is expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy. Right? It means that it feeds on itself. And so you could just, dial it in. You don't want to have too little. You don't want to have too much. You want to have just the right amount. But the problem is that bureaucracy is self-reinforcing, self-feeding, right? It grows. And because of this aspect, in Scrum at Scale, we have this idea, this concept of the MVB, the minimum viable bureaucracy. We always want to make sure that we keep bureaucracy in check, because if not, it's just going to grow and it's going to overtake the system and slow everything down. And I'm sure if you think about it for 1 second, you have something in mind, some governmental bureaucracy, some part of the organization that you work for, where bureaucracy has just gotten out of hand. And so MVB is just a concept, right? And a concept cannot change that much per se. But what it can help us to do is, first of all, have a counterweight, right? Raise awareness that bureaucracy actually has that tendency of growing and growing and growing if not kept in check. And what I like to do with this concept is the following. I like to introduce it into organizations as early as possible. If there's already a need, a want to increase bureaucratic bureaucracy, then it's almost always too late to introduce that idea. So I like to introduce it at the very early, at the beginning, right? And I'll say, oh, by the way, guys, there's this concept here of the MVB, minimum viable bureaucracy, and it's about keeping bureaucracy in check, right? And because what this will do is that people will actually nod their heads and they'll be bought in, because everyone knows that bureaucracy is a pain in the butt and everybody is against it in theory, in general, right? But as soon as it's actually starting to grow, people will want it to grow, right? Because they have some political interest, because they actually have a real need there, right? And so it's very important to introduce this concept early on. And so then once you have introduced this concept early on, and I'll actually print it out and put it into rooms and so on, or frame it so people have it visible all the time, or like at the beginning of PowerPoint presentations, I'll show it, right, to just keep it in people's head. And then you're going to be in a moment where somebody will want to add an event, a meeting, or a check, or a process, or something like that could potentially increase the bureaucracy. And this is the moment when you need to be very alert, and you're going to have to ask yourself and ask the team or management, is this actually necessary, or will this be adding to the bureaucracy? Because remember, in Scrum at Scale, we want to have the minimum viable bureaucracy, just as much bureaucracy as we need to survive. Not less, because then we'll be running into problems, but also not more, because we don't want to have this load, right? And you can see it's a very lightweight concept, but it's extremely powerful, because it's the tool that can help you check bureaucracy, rein it in, and even get rid of grown bureaucracy. If you want to learn more about the MVB, the minimum viable bureaucracy, or other concepts from Scrum at Scale and business agility, head on over to teamflow.de. I teach regular seminars on these topics and would be happy to see you there.